Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at some very fun battles in the Ultra League Holiday Cup featuring a really powerful anti-meta pick, and that is Alolan Golem. Alolan Golem is a rock and electric type Pokemon with the moveset of Volt Switch, Rock Blast, and Stone Edge. I'm running it as my closer. I have Charm Alolan Ninetales on the lead to cover for Giratina and counter users, and Lapras as the save switch to hopefully bait out their best counter. So without further ado, let's up into the matches and check out Alolan Golem closing games in the Ultra Holiday Cup. Hopping to the first match, leading Charm Alolan Ninetales into the mirror. I'm going to stay in this matchup to start, bank a Psyshock, and then save switch into my Lapras. This should put the Ninetales pretty close to Surf range, and on top of that, if I'm able to catch the Psyshock, that is even better. Psyshock is just going to do absolutely no damage to the Lapras, and now Lapras is in a pretty nice spot. They're staying in, so they clearly do not have a great response to Lapras in the back. I'm going to fire off the Surf. Surf is able to grab the shield from my opponent. They're staying in here, they're firing off a Psyshock. This is non-lethal, so I'm going to let this through. They go for the Psyshock. I'm going to continue to farm. They're going to send in Giratina, and here I get a bit too greedy, trying to reach double Surfs, and they do get the farm down. Thankfully, I do still have some energy on my Alolan Ninetales. I fire off the Weather Ball. Weather Ball is able to land, and even if they have Ancient Power, I will survive this. My opponent does have Ancient Power, and that gets me low. I'm going to try and commit to the farm down here. Giratina barely able to hang on with a sliver of health and reach the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to KO. I'm putting my full faith into Alolan Golem. Now that Giratina is out of the way, hopefully they'll be weak in the back. And they send in the Ninetales. In the back, they have Charizard, and now they're going to get swept by Alolan Golem. Rock Blast one-shots the Charizard. In comes the Ninetales. I'm able to double up on Rock Blast, and this will be game over. Opponent recognizes it, lets the charge move through, and that is a good game. Great lead in the next match, A9 into Obstagoon. My opponent will immediately save switch into their Charizard, and Charizard is not a save switch when Alolan Golem is around. I tank whatever they throw here. They go for the resisted Blast Burn. Golem able to tank it and double up on Rock Blast. There's no point in them shielding since I do have the back-to-back moves, so they're just gonna let the Charizard go and send back in the Obstagoon. But Obstagoon is not going to appreciate this Stone Edge. Stone Edge will hit for some heavy neutral damage, getting the Obstagoon below half health. Obstagoon is able to get the farm down. I'm gonna send in Ninetales, and this is not enough for a gunk shot, so I'm gonna let this go. It is just a cross chop. Cross chop does hit for neutral damage, but I'm able to tank cross chop pretty nicely. They're firing off charge move number 2. They go for another cross chop, and they stay in and let themselves get charmed down. In the back, they have their own Alolan Ninetales. I'm going straight for the Psyshock. This will do some solid chip damage or grab a shield, and honestly, I'm fine with either, as now I can send in Lapras, and Lapras will be able to finish off this game. I'm going to start shielding, as at this point, their only hope is me no shielding and trying to charm through the rest of my team, so as long as I commit my shields, I'm in a fantastic spot to finish off the game. I farm up a ton of energy, I fire off the Surf, and I get a shield. You know what? May as well go for the Skull Bash to finish off this game. I'm going to let this through. They end up going for a Weather Ball, and now I can finish off the game with the Skull Bash. Skull Bash will not quite KO, but it will allow me to Ice Shard down and secure the win. Tough lead in the next match, A9 into Aurorus. I'm going to save switch into Lapras because Lapras has a surprisingly okay matchup here. One Meteor Beam is not enough to one-shot, and I'm able to apply some heavy damage with the Surf. My opponent has a ton of energy. I'm going to let this go as I do tank a Meteor Beam, and my opponent went for a bait. That is incredibly good. This will be the Meteor Beam now, but honestly, I'm perfectly fine here. I tank that no problem, and I'm going to fire off another Surf, and this will come very close to KOing. My opponent is going to commit the shield, and they still have to Meteor Beam here, as a Weather Ball will not KO. I'm going to let this go. My opponent goes for a Weather Ball, and Lapras is able to reach a third Surf. My opponent lets that through, and Lapras has one switch advantage, and that's huge because they have a Charizard in the back. In comes Alolan Golem. They send in Giratina. I bring in Ninetales. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Nightmare lead in the next match, Alolan Ninetales into Roserade. Roserade is a massive core breaker for the team. I'm going to send in Lapras, these Ice Shards tearing through Roserade, and my opponent is going to counter swap with a Kyurem. This is not a great response to Lapras, as Lapras will be able to fire off the Skull Bash and grab a shield. Now my defense is buffed up, meaning that these Dragon Claws are not going to be doing nearly as much damage as they typically would. Dragon Claw lands, that just does absolutely nothing. Kyurem is going to fire off another Dragon Claw, but watch this. It is still not enough to KO, and Lapras is able to reach a second Skull Bash. This Skull Bash is going to land, getting rid of the Kyurem. My opponent is going to send back in the Roserade to get a nice farm down, but Roserade is going to pay a heavy price with those Ice Shards. They do have a lot of energy. I'm going to send in a Alolan Golem and commit the shield in case they're running Leaf Storm. It turns out they are running Dazzling Gleam, and in the back, they have their own Alolan Golem, but this one is running Rollout. There, I threw on some very unfortunate timing, giving them an entire free rollout. And at this point, I'm realizing I kind of just need to get rid of the Ninetales. So I'm going to send in the Ninetales, basically just to use it as a damage sponge. They fire off the Stone Edge, Ninetales tanks it, they're going to continue to farm, and they're going to fire off another charge move. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to let this go and save my shield for my Alolan Golem. They actually went for a Wild Charge. They're debuffed, so I'm hoping Rock Blast is going to KO. Rock Blast barely does not, and they reach the last second move. I'm going to let this go. Stone Edge will get me into the red. Opponent sends back in the Roserade. The question is, can Roserade reach double Weather Ball? They fire off the first. Alolan Golem gets to the Rock Blast. Rock Blast will be taking care of the Roserade as we clutch an improbable win. The tough leads continue in the next match, A9 into Charizard. I am going to throw one Charm and then save switch into my Lapras. My opponent is going to respond with an XL Lantern. I thought we had left Lanterns behind in the Great League Holiday Cup, but one has followed me into the Ultra League. Thunderbolt is able to land. This is a truly terrible matchup, as there's just not a lot Lapras can do here. I'm going to fire off the Skull Bash just to get some chip damage, but I am in a very tough spot. They continue to farm up a ton of energy. I'm hoping they go for the Surf here. If they Surf, maybe I can hold on, but my opponent knows better, and they go for the Thunderbolt. I'm going to send in the A9, not shield a thing, fully farm down, and then hope that my Alolan Golem is going to be able to sweep in the back. I continue to farm. They reach a last-second charge move. I'm going to let this go and then try and snipe with the Golem, but the Charm ends up KOing. They have Charizard, and they have Shadow Ampharos. Maybe this is doable. I'm going to bait here with the Rock Blast, hoping to try and grab a shield, and I get a shield. That is big. They have a decent amount of energy here. I'm going to call that it's a bait, and it is just the Brutal Swing. I'm able to hang on, and now I'm going to fire off the Stone Edge. I have a shield advantage. I'm going for the big damage, but my opponent is going to double shield and begin to fire off charge moves themselves. I will commit the shield. It is the Brutal Swing. I'm going to continue to farm up. They're firing off Brutal Swing number 2, and I will commit the shield here. My hope is that I'm going to be able to load up enough charge moves here, but my opponent makes an incredible play, sending the Charizard in the middle of my Volt Switch. They snipe with a Dragon Claw, and unfortunately, we lose the game. Moving into the next match, leading A9 into another Shadow Ampharos. I'm definitely happy to stay in this matchup because my safe switch of Lapras doesn't really appreciate the electric damage. They have built up to a potential Blast or Zap Cannon. I commit the shield, and it's a Focus Blast. My opponent is going to safe switch into Aurorus, and I respond with a Alolan Golem. They're probably going straight for the Meteor Beam. I'm going to let this through. Meteor Beam is not going to be enough to KO, and I should at the very least be able to grab a shield here. I have the back-to-back Rock Blast, firing off the first. They let it through, and I win CMP on their Weather Ball. This is quite nice. Basically, what I needed out of Alolan Golem was to get that shield back, and I was able to do so. They're going to fire off the Weather Ball. That is perfectly fine by me, as now I can send back in the Ninetales, and I should be able to KO with the combination of Charm damage and this Weather Ball. Weather Ball will get them into 1 Charm range, and then I can just farm down. My opponent does not want to get farmed down, so they're going to send in their own Ninetales. I do have to be mindful that they do have the Aurorus as a potential catch endgame. I land a Psyshock. I'm going to send in Lapras. Lapras is going to continue to farm. I go for the Surf, but I lose CMP. Psyshock, as we've seen earlier, doesn't do a lot of damage, so I'm going to let this go and then return fire with the Surf. Surf will get them deep into the red if they let it through, and they do. Lapras is going to go for an aggressive farm down here. They reach a last second move, but as you're going to see, it's only a Weather Ball. I'm able to tank it and leave with a nice amount of energy. I'm very close to the back-to-back Surfs. In comes the Ampharos, and now I have the back-to-back Surfs. I'm going to throw the first, wait a turn to make sure they don't catch, but they wait a turn as well. What an absolutely unreal play by my opponent. They're able to make the catch. In comes the A9. A9 gets the farm down as we narrowly get the win. Great lead in the next match, A9 into Giratina. My opponent is going to save switch into XL Dubwool, and this is honestly a problem Pokemon for this team. Dubwool has a lot of neutral to positive play throughout, so this is definitely going to be a team effort to get rid of it. These charms are adding up, and I'm going to fire an early Weather Ball as well. Weather Ball lands, I'm going to throw one more charm and now send in Lapras. My goal is I want to try and keep the Ninetales healthy for the Giratina, so now I'm just going to send in the Lapras to basically just be a damage sponge for all this energy from Dubwool. Dubwool is firing off another move, they go for the Body Slam, and now I'm going to fire off my Surf. Surf will KO if they let it through. My opponent is going to commit the shield. They're trying to make a play for switch. If they want switch advantage that badly, I am not going to let it happen. In case they go for the payback, I commit the shield and they full send the payback, so that proves to be a massive shield. My opponent is going to send in their Giratina. They're looking for a farm down. Unfortunately, I'm not running Ice Beam, so I'm forced to go for the resisted move of Surf. Surf doesn't do a lot of damage, but the main thing I'm getting out of this is those Ice Shards. The Ice Shards are adding up quite a bit. I fire off another Surf, and now I do have them below half health. I send in the Ninetales. If they have Ancient Power, this is going to hurt, and unfortunately, they do have Ancient Power. That's going to get me low. I continue to farm. This is another charge move. I believe it's only a Dragon Claw, though, so I let it go. It is the Dragon Claw. In the back, they have Charizard, and I can safely bring in a Alolan Golem, and a Alolan Golem is going to finish this game. Dragon Claw does nothing. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Tough lead in the next match, A9 into Charizard. I will immediately save switch into Lapras, and my opponent is going to respond with Obstagoon. Definitely not a great spot to be in, but the good news is by baiting out the Goon, hopefully this means that my Alolan Golem is going to have play as a sweeper in the endgame. They're just going to fire off charge move after charge move here. They go for the Night Slash. I let that through, and of course they get the boost. Things going from bad to worse. This Night Slash is now very close to KOing. I'm not really able to go for any additional fast moves due to their boosted damage, so I'm just going to fire off the Surf to make sure that I get this damage. I'm going to send in the Ninetales. Ninetales looking for the farm down. Obstagoon able to reach a final charge move here. They are going to end up going for the Obstruct. I'm able to get the charm down, and now I send in a Alolan Golem to try and close out this game. In comes Golem. They have Giratina in the back, and I concede the match. Hopping into the final match, picking up a great lead, A9 into Obstagoon. My opponent save switches into Shadow Ampharos, and since this is a bit tricky for my backline, I'm actually going to stay in here and play it out. This is enough for a nuke move. I commit the shield, it's the Focus Blast, and now I can safely charm down and leave with a ton of energy. My opponent is going to send in Pidgeot, and I'm going to pivot into Lapras. I need to bait back out the Obstagoon, get rid of it with the Ninetales, so that way Alolan Golem can clean up in the endgame. Pidgeot goes for the Feather Dance, and that is quite unfortunate as now my attacks are doing significantly less damage than they did before. I fire off the Surf. Surf lands. My opponent takes advantage of the desync switch timers, and they're going to send in Obstagoon. Obstagoon's goal is now basically just to farm me down, but I should be able to throw enough charge moves to stall a switch clock where I can bring back in my Ninetales while they're still switch locked. I fire off the Surf. Surf is going to land, and now I can send back in the Ninetales. I have 2 Weather Balls loaded, time to put them to use. I fire off the Weather Ball, I grab a shield, I throw the charm, and they're going to start throwing their energy. I let this through, it's a cross chop, I throw one more charm, and now they should be at 2 more charge moves. I'm going to shield the first, and then fire off the Weather Ball. Weather Ball ends up being a CMP tie, and that is quite big. This will probably be grabbing the final shield from my opponent, as they're recognizing that Obstagoon is going to be the key to victory here. They fire off the cross chop, and now it is Alolan Golem time. These Volt Switches are adding up on the Obstagoon. Obstagoon is going to fire off the cross chop. Cross chop will definitely hurt here. I do have to watch for the catch. I'm farming. They go for the catch onto Pidgeot, but I'm able to send in Lapras, and I have the charge move loaded on Golem, so this game should be over. In comes Obstagoon. It's a simultaneous KO, but with Golem alive in the back, we get the win. All in all, Alolan Golem feels like a pretty nice anti-meta option for the Ultra Holiday Cup, especially as a closer. Volt Switch does some nice damage, and the Stone Edges do hit very hard against most things in the meta. Of course, it's not going to appreciate the foe fighters or the regular fighters like Virizion or Obstagoon, and it definitely doesn't do the best against Giratina, but overall, once those threats are out of the way, it can put in a ton of work closing games. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.